You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 145 of Retired Racehorse Radio on the Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, Cashel Company, and My New Horse. Retired Racehorse Radio is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse. Brought to you in cooperation with the Retired Racehorse Project and New Vocation's Racehorse Adoption Program.
It's our 6th birthday. We're celebrating with talking to a pretty epic horse gal, Jacklyn Wyatt, who not only had a role in Jobber's story, but also a pretty impressive story of her own. To celebrate, we're also doing a Track to Triumph story from one of our amazing listeners. And last but never least, we get a training tip and adoptable horse from New Vocation's Bridget Heasley. So grab something sweet to celebrate with us and listen in.
And they're off on Retired Racehorse Radio, the podcast that is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse.
This is Joy Orr in Detroit, Michigan.
And this is Kristen Kovach-Bentley in Jamestown, New York, and you're listening to Retired Racehorse Radio.
Kristen, we are at the halfway point of winter, I always like to feel like, at least in the Midwest. I know we technically go to like April, but I feel like January and February are the real brutal months.
Yes. Yeah. Like December, you're still like, there's the holidays. You're kind of like riding it high, even though the days are getting longer. Like, so we are definitely at that.
That's true.
We're at that tipping point.
It.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is cold. It is windy. Like it's howling around outside. So if you hear like in the background, listeners, sorry, that's probably me.
It's
real scary.
What I think inspires a lot of Edgar Allan Poe stories is the weather that's happening out right now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't read that stuff in the summer.
You sure don't. You sure don't. But we have happier things. Being our 6th birthday, I can't believe this podcast has been around for 6 years. That doesn't feel real to me at all.
It is. It's hard to like wrap your mind around like how long is 6 years?
Yes.
Well, so like I asked you
some math, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, like I have to do the add and the subtract because I'm kind of stupid. But like I asked you before we started recording.
90 days.
Okay. That's more math than I am capable of at this time. So thank you for that. But like, yeah, like what were you doing 6 years ago?
Drinking heavily at the first drop of the show.
Nice.
I was wildly nervous. I mean, I had guest hosted on Horses in the Morning a few times, but you know, the risk is low, right? Like worst case, Jen would just get some negative feedback if I didn't do well.
Wait. No. I think the risk is way higher on Horses in the Morning because that's live, or it was.
Yeah, but it wasn't like my brainchild, my project. Like Glenn could just like, hey, you suck. And like, I never come back. You know, I just hide in the forest and it's done. But
yeah, that's true. I think that's what happened to me. Because I used to come on that show sometimes and not as much after a couple of years. They were like, you need to give her a pre-recorded show so we can edit her out.
Well, you'd obviously improved since then if that's been the case.
That must be it.
Or my standards are low, I'm not sure.
Thanks, Glenn.
But regardless, I remember drinking like maybe a half bottle of wine before our first recording because I was so nervous. So if I sound drunk in that first episode, I probably was.
Oh, girl.
Yes.
It's gotten smoother since then.
It's gotten smoother. I can tell you what my drink of choice right now is an Olipop orange flavor. So we've come a long way in 6 years.
Yeah, I'm drinking my hot tea because I'm chilly.
Yes.
So, but I was not on that show 6 years ago. I was blissfully sitting back. True. I was a guest a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So you, in some ways, you were part of the beginning. We had Jamie on here too, and we were just trying to figure out how we make this whole thing work. But yeah, 6 years ago, I had gotten Astrid. I might have had her for like a year. And then I was just wondering, like, did I make any of the right choices getting this horse? Like, am I making the right choice starting the show? Like, I really was like a 20-year-old having a quarter life crisis, but it has been worth it. We're definitely a lot healthier since then.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 6 years ago would have been what, early 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Did I do the math? I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was trying to,
wild.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure out like, okay, after the makeover, what do I do now?
Oh, that's right. Because you had competed pretty recently. And so you were figuring out your next chapter.
Yeah. So, and I had set myself the goal. I was like, at some point in this horse's career, I really want to win a buckle with him because I think that would be a really cool, in the Western world, like winning a trophy buckle is kind of like the prize that you go for, and, there's various ways to do that. Like, it's not like I went to the NFR and won, right? But
Yeah.
I went to a couple of series and then like kind of achieved that goal faster than I was thinking. So now I'm like, well, now what do I do? But at the time I was like, okay, like now I'm a makeover graduate. Like my job is to go out and be the best ambassador I can be for the whole breed in this discipline, of like
Yours
ranch
is
horse and cow horse. So,
so much more wholesome than mine. Like yours is the inspirational one.
I mean, I guess, yeah. Yeah, we had a good time. And then I
Yeah.
had also just gotten the job at RRP, so I was still trying to figure that out too.
Oh,
So,
that's right. Oh, it was a very critical point in your career leading up to here.
yeah, 6 years. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 6 years ago was kind of a weird time.
Really was. There's a lot of growth, I think, for both of us in that era. And I mean, we're closer to a decade than we are to not, which is even scarier. I'm also curious, like, how many listeners have been with us since day one? Like, I feel like that would be a really fun thing to know. So if
Yeah,
you
if you're still
have,
listening, please let us know. Comment
yeah,
on the
also let
post,
me
send
know
us a
why.
message. Yeah, why are you still here? But also,
Obviously, I'm
thank
very
you.
glad you're still here. Please don't go. Please don't abandon me. I have issues.
Yeah. But no, I mean, we've been getting like so much more listener feedback recently and messages and emails, and that really does like it brightens our day, but also reminds us that like it's not just me and Joy like shrieking into the void at each other. Like we're
Yes.
really happy to know that, we're reaching you guys and, we take all the comments and questions and everything you guys send back to us and try to work that right back in and really make this like a show for all of you. It's not just for me and Joy to scream at each other. So thanks for coming
Absolutely.
along for the ride.
It's been super fun and just all of the content. It's crazy. And we still like, I'm really excited for this year. For those who don't know, Chris and I actually meet outside of this too. We talk probably daily, but we have so much planned for the year already. So I know when we first pitched it to Glenn, he was like, "What are you gonna do after a year?" I'm like, "I'll wing it." And I'm so glad
Girl,
we
you have no
did.
idea.
Yes, but 6 years later, it's a pretty great show, and we've talked to some pretty amazing people, and we're going to do it all again today. Super excited for it. Before we do that, you're going to hear from our premier sponsor, Kentucky Performance Products.
Frequently asked questions brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. Question: my friend was telling me that supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids decreased the level of inflammation in horses with arthritis. Is this true? Answer: yes. There have been several peer-reviewed studies that have shown that supplementation with the omega-3 fatty acids known as EPA and DHA will help support healthy levels of inflammation in the joints. The best source of EPA and DHA is fish oil. We often recommend adding a high-quality omega-3 fatty acid supplement, such as Kentucky Performance Products, contribute to the diet of horses who struggle with joint pain and stiffness. A KPP customer named Sarah recently posted a review sharing her experience with Contribute. She wrote, "I recently swapped my Western dressage and cow horses over to the Joint Armor and Contribute. Astonishing results! My horses are moving beautifully with more impulsion and suspension in their gaits." You can learn more about Contribute and omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA at kppusa.com. Got questions about your feeding program? We can help. Email Karen at questions@kppusa.com or call us at 859-873-2974.
Joy, I'm really excited about our guest today. I've wanted to bring her on for a long time, and I'm not sure how best to introduce Jacklyn Wyatt. She's like a thoroughbred racing Renaissance woman in some ways. So like Jacklyn's had, so many different routes in and out of the racing industry. And I think she's got a really unique perspective and angle now. And of course, near and dear to my heart, she's where I got Jobber from. So Jacklyn, I'm really excited to have you with us on Retired Racehorse Radio. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so this is really cool. So because everything always begins and ends with Jobber in my life, we're just gonna go ahead and start with Jobber. So how did you first get acquainted with Jobber Bill, and then what made you like connect with him? Because you took him off the track first. You were like his first transition point away from racing to retirement. And then eventually he found his way to me. But yeah, let's back up a little bit. So like, how did you get to know Jobber?
Yeah, so I first met Jobber in early 2013. I was galloping horses for Abraham Katryan, and he was my favorite horse in the barn. He had this amazing way of going. He was so smooth, he had a wonderful mouth, and he was such a gentleman. He always did whatever you asked him to do, and even the days when he was feeling really cheeky and he would start bucking, he always did so in such a kind manner where you always felt safe. And in addition to that, he also just had this amazing personality. I always found myself hanging out in his stall in the barn. He was so fun to just go and play with, snuggle with. He was so gentle. And so you could always find me hanging out in his stall on any given day. And he always just had this way of making your day better. So a few years later, I found myself in the position where I could actually own a horse again. And it was just a no-brainer. I was taking a horse off the track. I spent a decade of my life working at the racetrack, and I wanted to give a racehorse a second lease on life. So I thought it would be amazing if I could actually connect with a horse that I had ridden previously. But it had been a few years, so I kind of started working back in time and looking back at 2013. Jobber was the first horse that came to mind. So I looked him up, and surprisingly, he was still racing, and he was racing nearby at Fort Erie. So one day I went down and watched him race, and just seeing him out there, everything just kind of came flooding back. I remembered all the good times riding him at the track and knew that he was the one. I needed to make this happen. So after that, I reached out to Steve Cathcart, who was his trainer at the time, and let him know, my interest and what I wanted to do. And he bridged the conversation with the owners. And a couple of months later, I received a phone call from him that they were ready to retire him and I could come and pick him up. So it was so exciting. I worked with the barn owner where I was going to board him, and we went down and picked him up a few days later, brought him home. And it was like time had never passed. I sat on him a few days later, and he was the exact same horse. He had the same personality, and it was just so great to be reunited with him again.
I love it. This warms my heart, obviously, because like he's my child, but he was also your child first. So I'm like, oh, like we can all love Jobber, but also like the same things are true, like even when he's like a total tool, I'm like, well, you have still made my day brighter, even though you're being a heinous wild creature right now. So, because he's certainly like once he's comfortable in a place, like his personality kind of like then he's comfortable and he's confident and then he's a little bit different. So, and it is funny because I'm thinking now, I'm like, oh yes, when you're like, oh, he was so safe when he bucked. I was like, this is how I know you were a professional rider and I was not. I was briefly, but not on racehorses. But there's been many times where I'm like, whoa, here we go, but hearing you be like, oh, he was so safe, I'm like, yes, you were used to galloping horses much faster than I've ever gone. So that's really fun for me. So love that. So yeah, let's back up a little bit and talk about your riding career, because of course you got to know him first as his exercise rider, which, kind of lets us know like you had a professional career on the track. So, and you're still based in the Toronto area. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about your riding career, like how you got started, and then how you found your way to the racetrack.
So I got into riding starting with a riding lesson that my grandparents gifted to me for my birthday when I was just a kid. And I was hooked from day one. It just sparked this lifelong passion with horses ever since then. I started taking just like weekly lessons at the time. And as a kid, I did equitation and hunters. And then as I got a little bit older into my teenage years, I started getting into show jumping. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved the competitive nature of it, the fact that it was just all about precision and speed. And at the time, the horse that I had, he was definitely more go than whoa. So we did so well in the speed rounds, and it was such a thrill. So around the same time, I started getting a little bit more interested in thoroughbred horse racing. My parents would sometimes take me to the local trotter tracks, and I would usually be watching the simulcasting and the thoroughbred racing that was going on. And at the same time as well, I used to be able to actually stream a lot of horse racing online. So I would always be watching it online as well. And the more that I watched, the more interested that I got in it. I really loved the idea of being a jockey, to be able to ride horses in races, like to have that competitiveness, everyone vying to win, the strategy and the tactics that were involved in that too. It was just so thrilling. I loved the idea of it. And eventually I actually realized that you could make a career out of this. And it just became the ultimate goal for me to be able to make a living riding horses, doing what I love doing, having that thrill every day. It was the ultimate dream. But back then, I had no idea how to get involved in the horse racing industry. I was a teenager. There was not much available online. I didn't really know anybody either that was in the industry, so I had no clue where to start. One night, my dad was driving home from work, and it just so happened that Hall of Fame jockey Standie Hawley was on the radio. So he called in, he managed to get on the air, and he basically just told Sandy that his daughter wants to become a jockey. Does he have any advice on how I could get started with that? And Sandy was incredible. He spent some time to share some advice over the air, and he asked my dad to stay on the line afterwards. And he took my dad's phone number. So I was super excited when I heard this. This was incredible. My dad spoke to Standie Hawley. This is amazing. But we didn't really expect much else beyond that. But the next day, Sandy called and he lined up a job for me to become a hot walker at Woodbine that summer, if that's the career that I wanted to pursue. So of course, I took the job. I started walking hots at Woodbine that summer and I never looked back. That later on that year, I started galloping horses, and a couple of years later, I took out my jockey's license.
Oh, that is so cool. Like, thanks, Dad. Like, I feel like you hear a lot of like dads being like, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't be a professional rider. You can't be a jockey. That's really awesome that your dad was like, oh my God, like, and called the radio and got the number. That's amazing. So yeah, well done,
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah, my parents are amazing. They're so supportive. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's amazing. So where did your professional career take you? You know, like I remember, and we'll get into like how I was able to follow your career a little later, but like I remember at one point you were riding in Florida, like you kind of went all over the place for a little while.
Yeah, so every winter I would go down to Florida to gallop horses. So I spent a couple winters in Payson Park, and then later on I spent a winter down in Ocala as well. I rode races at Woodbine and Fort Erie, and then I rode one race at Tampa Bay Downs, which was a lot of fun actually in my last year of riding too.
I love that. Yeah. So, and that segues well into the next question I have, which is, you know, I think we tend to think that when jockeys retire, a lot of them like find some way to stay full time in the racing industry. Like it seems like the kind of industry that once you're in, you're kind of like in for life in some way, shape, or form. You know, but you've taken a super different direction since you retired, which I think is really cool. My like tiny non-tech brain does not quite comprehend all the stuff that you have done after retirement. But, you know, like I think what's really cool about that, though, is that I know that you are like kind of self-educated to get into that field. So can you tell us a little bit about like the direction you've gone post racing?
Yeah, absolutely. Technology is definitely not what you would think of as a next career for somebody coming off the racetrack, but it was actually quite natural for me. Growing up, I was a bit of a nerd. I loved computers, and I taught myself how to write code as a kid as well. In my early teens, I also launched an online business, which is a virtual horse racing game. And I've been running that for almost 25 years now, which is crazy to think of. It's
Oh my
been that
gosh.
long. It's wild. So that foundation that I had in technology and then continuing to sharpen my skills running that business over the years, when it came time to make a transition and move away from the racetrack, it was just natural to get into technology. So my first job out of the racetrack was as a web developer. I joined a retail company and worked in their marketing department doing web development. But it wasn't long before I started continuing to progress my career. And I think about every couple of years after that, I sort of pivoted roles into something different. So I moved into software engineering and then got into cybersecurity. And from there, I've done security engineering. I've gotten into application security, cloud security, gotten into risk. And now I'm a little more focused on risk, cybersecurity, and IT controls, as well as regulatory work.
This is like, yeah, I'm just picturing like the Matrix, which is probably not it, but I'm like, Jacklyn is so cool. And I know like that was, I mean, that was kind of how we like connected in the, well, okay, that's how we connected with Jobber, because I remember one of your jobs that you had, you were doing so much international traveling that you're like, this poor horse is just sitting here, you know? So I remember that's when you reached out and you were like, are you interested in this horse? Because he's literally just standing around waiting for me to come home and I'm spending all my time. I mean, you were everywhere, weren't you? Like in England and vaguely remember you going to Asia. Like I feel like you were literally traveling everywhere in one job.
Yeah, there was a lot of travel. Work was really taking up a lot of my time, and unfortunately, I couldn't dedicate that to Jobber. I also think that my ambitions of turning him into a show jumping horse were not quite working out. The odd time that I was able to hop on him, he didn't quite seem like that was his forte at all. He seemed much more interested in the cows and all the other stuff that was happening at the barn at the time. So I'm glad
Yeah,
he was able
which
to find a better fit with you.
yeah. Well, and I love that that's, like one of the reasons that you're like, hey, I think this might be a good horse for you. And I think I've told this story on the show before, that you were like, he literally watches the cattle, like for, I think there was team roping practicing happening at your farm, and you're like, comes down and watches them, which he still does. I think he thinks he's a predator, so he's like, yeah, yes, and he'll sort of hunt the cows on his own. But yeah, it is incredible that that's, how that worked out. And that always makes me think, like, how many other thoroughbreds are waiting to be cow horses that just have never seen a cow before and will never know. But that's a conversation for another time. So, uh, so, so yeah, like, what's a day in your life like? Like, I imagine, like, I don't know what cybersecurity looks like, but it sounds very intense.
It can be. It definitely can be. And not every day is the same, that's for sure. But I think like at a high level, what I do is sort of assess potential risks. I make sure that all of our teams are kind of following the best practices for security. Also work on developing strategies so that the teams can help strengthen our defenses as well. Um, my team works to help make sure that we're meeting all the regulations that help keep our systems all safe and secure, and also do what we can to ensure that all the client data remains safe as well.
I love that. Now, and we had chatted a little bit before we started recording, and you mentioned like that's typically a male-dominated world, and I think you could probably say that the racetrack is also a male-dominated world. So, like, did you find that the racetrack kind of prepared you for that kind of like lifestyle, or that job setting, I guess?
So yes, I've come from the racing industry, which is definitely very male dominated, and moving into the technology and cybersecurity space in particular, which is also another very male dominated industry. And I think there's a lot of things that I've learned over the years from the racetrack that have helped position me a little bit better in the corporate world, to be in this kind of scenario. And I like to take what I've learned and help lift up the other women around me as well as much as I can. Like it's about building that voice, getting that visibility. So I do a lot of mentorship. I founded a women in cybersecurity employee resource group as well. And I'm always looking for ways that I can give back to women, help them grow their leadership skills and find those opportunities so that they can get their voice heard and to become a part of to have a seat at the table.
I love that. That's awesome. Did you like, were there a lot of other women riders that you were able to, connect with in your like race riding career? Did you run into a lot?
Yes, there were quite a few that were in the jockeys room at Woodbine. So I had the fortune of starting out with quite a few other apprentices, and we had a few journeyman jockeys at the time as well. So it was great to be able to, learn alongside them and have that mentorship with women who have been through the same thing that you were going through. I think it definitely helped a lot.
That's cool. Yeah, that's how, like I like to, when I can, put myself in sort of a similar, like I used to teach riding and coach, and I kind of like miss that in in my life now. So like I always, when I can find, a way to sort of like mentor along someone else, in some part of this industry, like it is very rewarding, because I've certainly like gotten a lot of help from many mentors over the years. So yeah, I think we probably don't give that enough credit for like how helpful that can be, whether that's, in the horse world or in the professional world or, wherever it is. Like, yeah, mentorship is huge. So, um,
Absolutely. It has such a profound impact on so many people. I know it had a huge impact on my riding career, on my corporate career, and it's so rewarding to be able to give that back to others.
yeah, yeah, I love that pay it forward kind of mentality. So, okay, so this is the fun bit for me, and hopefully also the fun bit for you. And this is also the part where I reveal that, like, hi guys, it's Kristen, your kind of gaming co-host. So I have played Jacklyn's horse game for I don't know if you know how many years I've played. I mean, you could probably look up how long, but like definitely when I was in high school, I was playing the game that you developed. And I think this is actually one of like if anyone actually asked me point blank, I think this is the thing that got me into horse racing. Um, which I think is just a kind of a unique angle. Like, I always watched it, when like TVG or whatever was on. I was like, oh, look, there's horses on the screen, because as a horse crazy kid, you just glom onto whatever horse you can, see. But when I got the opportunity to play this game, this is where I learned the most about horse racing. So in some ways, like this has been the thing that sort of like got my career trajectory in the direction that it's in. Because I don't think I'd work for a retired racehorse project if I didn't have an interest in horse racing. So this is a really long-winded way of saying like, thank you, Jacklyn, for creating this game. But can you tell us a little bit more about this game and like how it works and how it's still going and how there's this whole community of people around it? Like I have literally made lifelong friends playing this game, which sounds a little crazy, but I promise it's legit.
That's so incredible to hear. And it just warms my heart hearing those stories. So thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
So the game is equination.net, and it's a virtual thoroughbred horse racing game. Essentially, you can join and you can own a stable or multiple stables of virtual race horses. And you can train them, you can breed them, you can buy and sell with other players, race against each other. We have graded stake races, and there's all sorts of different angles that you can sort of play. You can focus on the breeding side of things, you can focus more on the racing side. And it's free to play as well. We have some upgrade options available, but yeah, it's been in operation for almost 25 years. I think next year is 25 years, which is wild to think of it being around for that long. But it all started, yeah.
It's like stood the test of time though, like, which I think is amazing. Like what else can you think of that's been around for 25 years that people are still interacting with and playing and stuff like that? Like that's cool to me. Like you've built this thing. It's still here. It's still going, I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely incredible. I can't believe that it's still going. I can't believe that it's turned into what it has as well. Everything kind of started back when I was just a kid and I wanted to own a horse, but we couldn't afford to own a horse. So I turned to computers and the internet, and there were a few games back then that you could play, but nothing was ever satisfying enough. So I decided that I was going to create my own game. And around the same time too, the stable that I was riding at was going through a dispersal, and I was devastated that this community that I rode at was just going to be gone. All the people that I knew, all the horses, my coaches, it was just done, just like that. And I thought, why can't we bring this to the internet where we would all be together forever, no matter what happens? So those two things collided, and I created this site, which back then started off named after the barn that I was riding at the time, Shady Hill Farm. And eventually it just evolved into this huge game now. There's only a couple people that were playing it at the beginning, and then word started to spread. It started to get really busy, and it evolved into equination.net. And yeah, it's been in operation ever since, which is wild.
Yeah, and it really has like taught me a fair amount about how, like, I mean, obviously you still need to like read your blood horse and read your Pollock report and kind of learn like how the industry works. But, like things as simple as like, okay, this is how like a timed workout works. I was like, oh, I learned that on the game. And that's not necessarily something that you're going to learn from just watching horse racing itself, because like that is not really clear to the spectator, like how the workout part works and how the training part works, and obviously it's a game, so it's not like as lifelike, as like going out and training the horse on the track, but there's so much realism to it, which, I think is pretty clear from your experience as an exercise rider and as a jockey, like bringing all of that in. So it really is like a learning experience. And I think you hit on something really key too, when you said like, you couldn't afford a horse growing up. I am unlikely to ever be able to afford a racehorse, but this is a way for me to be like, look at this thing. I have this whole stable. They're not real horses, but I have a whole stable of racehorses, and I can kind of get my kicks doing that because I'm never going to be able to afford an actual racehorse myself. So, I know there's things like my racehorse and stuff you can buy into, but, I think having this like outlet through equination, I think is just sort of kept me feeling like I'm connected to this industry through something else other than the retired racehorses. So yeah, so kudos that, you've built this thing. But then also I think the community aspect is huge. I mean, I don't know how many active players there are now, but there's a chat room and there's a forum, and like people kind of keep tabs on each other's actual horses, like I know we've had someone active in racing in South Africa, so we were all following his racehorses for a while. Like that was just really cool. Like it never occurred to me that there was a South African racing community until I was part of Equination. So just really neat, to see like what you've built and how it's brought people together and, hopefully brought other people into the racing industry that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Yeah, it's really incredible to look at the community and how the community has just evolved and grown into this amazing group of people that, I mean, people have traveled across countries to meet one another. They've traveled across borders. They've purchased horses from one another. I've met
Yeah.
folks like across continents too. And like people have formed lifelong friendships through this website, which is amazing. And not only are there players that have been there since day one, which is also crazy to think about as well, but we're also supportive of one another too in that community. We help out each other for everything game related. If there's a newcomer that comes in and starts playing, everyone is just open arms. Here's all the information and advice and free horses and some play money to go and have fun with. That support to get people started, to bring them in and enjoy this game as well is really amazing to see. And then beyond just the support from the gameplay aspect, there's also the support that we've given to one another through life's up and downs. So many people have gone through, some challenges in life, and that community has been there for them, which is amazing. And we celebrate things in life together as well. It's become so much more than just the game. It's this whole community of people now that are just there for one another, and it's really heartwarming. And I can't imagine, I couldn't have imagined as a kid that the site would have turned into something that would have had such a profound impact on the lives of so many people. And I'm so grateful for it and the opportunity to have been a part of that as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's such a good representation of like the good side of the internet, right? Like it really can, we hear so much flack, right, of like social media is driving us apart, social media is ruining our lives, and you can actually still find places on the internet where it's like it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is to bring people together to share like common ground and common experiences. So yeah, well done for like nurturing that community. And yeah, I'm one example, but like I think there's no wrong way to get into horse racing, or like to kind of like find your place in the world. And like I know that I learned everything I know about horse racing from an online game is probably not a normal kind of route in, but it's like this is how my life has gone. So like I'm happy to tell everybody about it, and that's why we're so happy to have you on too. Because I just think this is a unique angle. So if there's anyone else out there who's like, I'll never own a racehorse, but you would like to try equination.net, give it a go because now you've heard from the founder. So yeah. Yeah, I love this. I think you've had such a fascinating career, that started on the track and, in some ways you're still very connected to the track through this community and through the horses. So yeah, Jacklyn, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. This has been really, really cool.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a fantastic time.
Cashel has been crafting top-notch products since 1986, designed to make your ride safer, more convenient, and downright enjoyable. From the Crusader Fly Mask, the ultimate fly mask, trusted by riders nationwide, to the blanket top performance felt pad with pressed felt with merino fleece. It's like a spa day for your horse's back. To the beautiful beaded halters, adjustable, durable, and gorgeous. Visit cashelcompany.com today and gear up for the ride of a lifetime. Cashel, where quality meets the saddle.
Well, Kristen, let's hear what's going on at the Retired Racehorse Project in February.
Yes, February is Aftercare Industry Month, and that is our month-long virtual conference that's open to everyone with a professional interest in thoroughbred aftercare, whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit, or you are just a person who wants to learn a little bit more. So this virtual conference is generously sponsored by Thoroughbred Education and Research Foundation, and it is 4 online sessions, all virtual. They're all in the evening, so everyone can be all done with work and chores and riding. They all take place at 7 p.m. We have already had one come out if you are listening to this on the day that it releases, but we have 3 more sessions for the month of February. One of them is tonight, if you're listening to this on February 10th, and that is Thoroughbred Matchmaking. I will be leading that session. We will also have From Passion to Prosperity, Founding and Funding Your Nonprofit, coming up on February 20th. And then to close out the month on February 27th, we have There's No Place Like Home, Securing a Long-Term Property. So if any of those sessions sound interesting to you, you can register now to either watch live or get the replay in your inbox. Just head over to therrp.org and find Aftercare Industry Month in the education menu. Joy, we are loving our Track to Triumph series. As a reminder, if you would like to submit your story to be read on the air, you can find the link pinned on our Facebook page. Just search for Retired Racehorse Radio. And I think we have our first standardbred story tonight. Is that true?
We do, and I'm very excited because actually it's a friend of mine who listens in, so very excited to share her story. This was submitted by listener Jessica and her horse Goldenpedia, so another golden, who she lovingly calls Goldie. So her Track to Triumph story is in 2017. I was starting to build my lesson program. I had some horses available to me as well as my tried and true draft cross. We love a draft cross. I'd been with for nearly a decade, but I felt like a good step was to get a horse that I could personally train to be a lesson horse. Being the broke college student that I was drawn to adopting. I knew about new vocations through a couple of mutual friends and decided to apply. They had many gorgeous horses, bay horses available. Looks like she has a preference, and a little standardbred mare caught my eye. I'd never ridden a standardbred before, but I hooked up my bright red trailer and drove down to Ohio to pick up Goldenpedia, who we now call Goldie. I gave her a little time to settle in, and we had our first ride together bareback with a halter and lead rope. Right away, I knew I was hooked. She had such a good brain, and I had students on her within a month of being under saddle. In retrospect, it probably wasn't a good idea, but I was new to being a riding instructor, and she was such a saint. Within her first 3 years, either with me, she taught hundreds of walk, trot, canter lessons, hopped over some cross rails, did some dressage shows, and competed with students at shows and on the high school equestrian team. She was always a solid mount, but her heart was never truly in the show ring. During COVID, Goldie had taken my inexperienced mother on a few trail rides, and she blossomed. So we decided to try some endurance rides. We took a year to condition on the trail, and she blew my mind by consistently being able to trot 10 miles in about 50 minutes with ease. In 2021, we took second place in a 25 limited distance ride and won best conditioned. All the while, Goldie continued to teach lessons during the week. We continued to go on rides, camping all over the state, and fulfilling my lifelong dream of galloping down the shore of Lake Michigan. Now, Goldie is 20 years old and has bit a little bit of arthritis. She's still sound with management, but I'm not willing to risk her joints by asking her to go on long, vast distances. She continues to teach lessons and go on slower paced trail rides. I would not be the rider I am without this mare or have a program full of students who love ex-racehorses. Whether she's teaching lessons or living out her retirement, getting fat and sassy in the field, she will always have a home with me. Thank you for everything, Goldie. If that does not make you want to go get a standardbred, I don't know what will. What an amazing Triumph story. And Jessica, thank you so much for sharing that with us. If you want to share your Track to Triumph story with us, you can check our form out on our Facebook page, Retired Racehorse Radio. Submit it there for a chance to listen in. And if Facebook's not really your jam, you can always shoot us an email, joy@horseradionetwork.com.
Well, happy 6th birthday to us. We're going to switch it up today, and I am going to introduce new vocations just to make sure everyone is paying attention. So we are joined for our most favorite part of the show. It's our new vocations training tip and adoptable horse of the week. And we have with us Bridget Heasley from the standardbred side of new vocations. So Bridget, welcome back.
Hi.
So, okay, I have a training question, and it's certainly unique to standardbreds. It's maybe not a training question so much as like a weird observation. And and I know, I'm already laughing about this too. So among my standardbred owning friends, it seems like the standardbreds all do this like standie head flip or head toss or like roll their heads. And it's very strange because it seems like it's across the breed. And is that a thing? Like that surely cannot just be a thing, but it doesn't seem to be like, oh, like an idiosyncrasy of stabled horses because my thoroughbreds don't do it, but all of our standardbreds do this head flip. So what is that?
Yes, the famous standardbred head twirl or helicopter head. Um,
That is hilarious.
It is definitely a standardbred thing. Because like we have seen babies, turned out, weanlings and yearlings also just do it. And it's sort of like, an exuberance sometimes it's a frustration. It kind of seems like a standardbred way of communicating with us and with each other. That definitely does seem very unique to them. And, some will fully rotate their heads in circles, and some will kind of bounce up and down. Some will kind of
Wes
go
is a
side to
bouncer.
side.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
And
funny.
a lot of them will also play with their mouths, like their lips or their tongues at the same time. And like you said, it doesn't seem to be just horses that are stalled. Like I watch them do it in the field with each other. Just, I think, really, again, communicating with just standardbred unique body language.
Oh my God. Okay. So that's good. I'm glad that it's not like, okay, I just have a really weird horse. I mean, like as much as I would love to just have a really weird horse, because I've seen Wes, he's 21 now, so he's the oldest of my horses, and the thoroughbreds will be out and they're grazing and they're straight ignoring him. And he's
Yeah.
literally like bouncing
Yeah.
and like, play with me, play with me, play with me. And they're like, will you go away? And I'm like, I should get him another standardbred buddy so they can just sort of like groove at each other and do their weird thing, you know? But, so that's so funny. So there has to be then, if it's like within the breed, there has to be some genetic component to it somewhere.
I wonder, if it just was something they did many generations ago and so many of them have passed that communication along. I would love to know to what that, where that came from exactly and why it is, but it is breed wide and it doesn't seem to be having anything to do with how much they've raced, if they've raced at all, if they, were bred and just became riding horses immediately, inside, outside. It's just a very unique standardbred personality trait.
Yeah. Okay. And I should also add, like, it does not appear to be like head shaking syndrome too. So like if you've ever had a horse with head shakers, that's very different. And you can tell that that's a little bit different. So it's not like, oh, they all have head shakers. Like they're just odd. Yeah.
And when they go to work, they don't do it. They mostly do it just, at rest or at play. They don't tend to do it under saddle or in harness like they do just when loose.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Yeah. Also not like head shakers. Yeah.
Right.
That's all the time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely interesting. I was like trying to find some videos of what it looks like because I've never seen this. So Kristen, you need to send me a video because
oh girl, I have so many.
TikTok is not fulfilling the need.
Oh, I'm gonna blow your phone up with videos of Wes being annoying. I love it.
Please do. Because I'm like thinking for me, if I were to bring a standardbred home without that knowledge, like would I want to call the vet? Would I think there's something neurological? Would I call new vocations back? Like I think this is really interesting to learn about. And I'm curious, have you ever noticed them do it under saddle or typically like in the field or at rest?
Not under saddle. They really don't do it while they're working. It's mostly just while they're, hanging out, whether it's inside or outside and interacting with one another.
Like I find it funny, I just think it's like his way of expressing himself, like his weird, emotional way of being like, look at me, it's almost like a dog with a head tilt where you're like, oh, it's kind of cute. It's so not cute. Annoying. It's not destructive. So if this is not selling you on the standardbreds, people, like you really need to see it in action. I'll have to post a clip of Wes grooving along because he just sort of bounces along. I don't know. I find it very endearing.
Like what music do you think they have playing in their head? That's what I would be questioning.
I think it's the March of the Muppets for my guys. Like,
yes.
Oh, so fun. Well, thanks for sharing that, Bridget. I'm very curious about it. Kristen, maybe we should share it on social. So
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And folks, if this does not sell you on the standardbred, then our adoptable horse of the week will, because Goldie's legacy is so cool looking. Bridget, can you tell us a little bit more about him?
Yes, Goldie's legacy is, I think he's 8 or he just turned 9. He's a pacing bred standardbred gelding who raced not a ton of times, about 80, little over 80 starts, won a good deal of money.
We have very different standards of racing a lot. He didn't race much, just 88 times.
Yeah, just 88 times. But won over $500,000 in those starts. So it was a very good racehorse and has transitioned well to riding. He is a little more sensitive than a lot of our standardbreds. He's slightly more reactive, so not necessarily the horse someone's looking for if they want to have a grandma safe trail horse, but he's very fancy and very athletic. So somebody who's looking for a show prospect or, maybe a fox hunter or eventing type horse, this is your guy. He's fancy looking. He's fancy moving. Under saddle, he trots and has a lovely trot. And also under saddle, he canters. So he has already started on the canter and is very, very willing to canter under saddle.
And in a ring. Like, I think it's harder to canter them in a ring for sure.
Yes.
Like, then, like I started Wes across a field where I was like, you've got acres to figure it out. Like in a ring, this is way harder. And he looks great. His trot is gorgeous. He looks like he wants to be a hunter.
Yes, I just love him. And he is full of standardbred head twirls. And he also very much likes to give kisses and steal your hat.
Oh, bonus. Okay, so he's got lots of personality.
Lots of personality. Yes, he is just an absolute charmer. Like, someone will adore him.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm like, wait a minute. Hang on. Is it going to be me? Do I need to adore him? Like,
someone needs to take him so I don't keep him.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
I love him.
I mean, like, I'm watching his walk trot video right now. He looks like he wants to. Oh, yeah. Oh, he reminds me of Wes, but like in the best way. Oh, I love this horse. Yeah, he looks like he just wants to go and like cruise around. I could see him being a really fun field hunter for somebody, who likes like a big boned, big bodied guy. He just has that big old style look. I don't know how much fun it is for people to listen to me watch a video, but like, you guys need to log on and watch this horse's video. He's very cool. You can just listen to me watch it in real time. That's all that's happening right now. Yeah. Oh, he's neat. Okay, Joy. Zach wants this horse.
I was looking at it and I was like, Zach does want this horse. He's like a great size. You can tell he's got great personality and not shy to show it in a good way, but that nice 15-3. And he does look quite sporty.
Yes.
I like him a lot.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, and he's got
pretty steady too, which is nice.
Yes. Adoption fee is $2,500, which I think is a steal for a horse like this, because if you got like a green warm blood at about the same level, you'd be spending way more than that for something that looks pretty comparable. True. So love this. All right, Bridget, remind people where to go to find this horse.
You can find him at horseadoption.com, newvocations.org. They take you to the same place, but click on standardbreds and he will pop right up there for you.
Love it. All right, folks, get those adoption applications in. You cannot adopt without an approved application. So get on it. And those are good for what, 2 years, I think? Is that
2 years, yes.
Oh, yeah. So get it in, and then you basically have a get out of jail free card for 2 years to adopt as many as you want. You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on the website at horseradionetwork.com. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Retired Racehorse Radio. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. You can find me on Instagram at The Horseback Writer and on Facebook at Jobber Bill, Racehorse to Ranch Horse. My email is kristen@horseradionetwork.com.
You can find me on Instagram at MisfitMare, and my email is joy@horseradionetwork.com. Thank you to our sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products, Cashel Company, and My New Horse, and to our partners, New Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program and the Retired Racehorse Project. Don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, horseradionetwork.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, as it really helps us grow. Remember to set your goals high and love to learn from every ride.
And always cowside leg.
Bye, guys.